I just had to start over because I just feel like every time I go live, when my son is still up, number one, and when my husband gets home, it just never really works out the way that I wanted to work out. So we're here again. Um, okay, we're talking about question number 14. So I'm not going to go over the whole thing, but the question was, how do I say no to one more thing? So it's the book that I'm reading. And so I'm going to just reread the real life case study. So it says, Jack was a successful doctor with a godly wife and great kids. He made a lot of money, but didn't ever seem to be enough for the growing needs of their family. Soccer, uniforms, school tuition, Game Boys, cell phones, computers, college tuition. Okay. Let me get. Okay. All right. So Jack and Jane had been members of their church for the past 15 years and felt like their boys really had received solid teaching and would be grounded when they were ready for college. Jack knew the church had given them a strong spiritual heritage, but it seems like he had never had time to give back to those that had given so much to him and his family. Working 80 hours a week was average for Jack since medical school. There wasn't time for anything else. His friend Daryl had been going to a prayer breakfast each week and invited Jack to attend. Reluctant to commit, Jack decided to attend and figured he had to eat breakfast anyways. To Jack's surprise, he found he had more energy after spending time with friends he knew from church. He received prayer support before going in to see his patients and realized he has missed out on relationships for many years. He was asked by another doctor there if he might donate some of his time to the children's home for a Christmas event. Jack always wanted to donate his medical services to charity, but he never made time for it. He quickly said, "Yes, I'd love to help." He knew God was asking him to help and knew it would require sacrifice and changing his priorities. On his drive to the office, he began to think of Jane and the boys. He had been a good provider, but not a father or a husband that was involved relationally. Wow, that's a word. He began to pray and cry out to God for wisdom on what he could do to take time and invest more in his family, church, and friends. Before he left his car, he promised God he would work less and give more to him in serving others. So, number one, it says, in what ways can you identify with Jack and Jane? Number two, how well do you think you can manage your time and your household? 3, read Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 42. Hospitality is a very important gift to others, and Jesus did not disregard Martha's service. Relationally, how was Martha depriving herself? Do you feel like you spend more time with daily tasks or with people? Would you classify yourself as someone caught up in the rat race? So, the real life lesson here in this question is, according to this book, if asked, most of us would plead guilty of living an overloaded life. Our lives are overloaded with technology, work, debt, pollution. Sorry, I was about to say population. Debt, pollution, ministry activities, noise, stressful decisions, and pressure. Taking time to share a cup of coffee with a friend seems like a luxury. With all the demands of life looming over us, sometimes it is hard to see a solution. Dr. Richard Switson, author of the book Margin, points out the need for Christians to recognize that we are often overextended and cannot actually live out our faith effectively because of the demands we have placed on ourselves. For the Christian, our love for God and others should never be jeopardized by the busyness of life. Micah 6:8 tells us what is required us to do. Justly love mercy, and walk humbly with God. If our lives do not allow time for these biblical expressions for our faith, we are missing out on God's best for us. And let me just say this, for example. I didn't read a chapter today in my Bible, and I didn't read one yesterday. And the last 2 days, I feel like I've been really anxious. But the days that I do read and the days that I journal, I don't feel as anxious. And I know it's because I'm putting God first in my day. And when I don't do that, I feel like my life is chaotic, okay? And I feel like again, I struggle with this as a woman and as a person of flesh. I feel like sometimes I get very overwhelmed and overstimulated very quickly. Um, especially when he's like whining, crying, or if my husband's like aggravated at something that's not working and he's fussing, or vice versa, like it is one of those things where if I do not start my day with the Lord, or I do not start my day sometime throughout the day or the night, okay? Hear me out. If I don't start it, if I don't read something from the book, I feel like I am overwhelmed, okay? Not in a sense of like, oh my gosh, I got to read, 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 read. No, in a sense of I did not put the Lord first in my day. So, and so in the back of my mind, I sometimes feel like, crap, like I wasn't disciplined enough to do that today. And so anyways, we're going to keep going. And it says, when we get too busy to worship God, serve our church, or meet a need of a stranger, we lost margin. And every moment of the day is full the rim with tasks. We will continue to feel burnout and stress. God created us as spiritual beings, and when we neglect our relationship with God, we find other distractions to fill that hole. Think for a moment what your week looks like. I'll have to call her back. How many things have eternal value? How many things nourish your relationship with God and your family? Do you often pass by someone on the side of the road that you could use your help, but you are late to an appointment and too busy to stop? Most likely, there is a greater need to find margin in your life. Yes, we all have responsibilities and daily obligations that require time, but they should never control us. As we see in Jesus' ministry, people always came first. Jesus, no doubt, could claim he was a busy man, but he never was too busy for those that presented a need for him. He always took time to do justly, to love mercy, and to do his Father's will. When we have lost this rhythm of life, we have lost what matters in God's economy. To have margin in our lives takes planning and a desire to resist the cultural tide pulling us towards more progress. Better homes, better jobs, and better bank accounts aren't always what God desires for us. The problem that progress has brought to our lives affects the core of what we really were created to do: worship God and love others. Yes, we have nicer cars and houses, but relationally, gosh, that's a word, we have not invested what God would desire of us. With God's help, we can live a healthy life with thriving marriages and relationships if we put relationships in the rightful place. When we do that, we will have time to help our neighbor when they need a hand, or we will be able to make a meal for someone recovering from illness and have the time needed. We won't have the abandoned our communities to live in balance, but rather we will have the ability to serve. Real life strategies. Pray about some activities you can give up to have more margin in your week. Make time to be together as a family that requires interaction and discussion. Identify the things that are keeping you from a living gosh, that's a word again, relationally healthy life, and realize sleep and rest are God's ideas. Today, in Real Life Wisdom in this book, it says, "Today I imagine my inner self as a place crowded with pins and needles. How could I receive anyone in my prayer when there is no real place for them to be free and relax? When I am still so full of preoccupations, jealousy, angry feelings, anyone who enters will get hurt. I had a very vivid realization that I must create some free space in my innermost self so that I may indeed invite others to enter and be healed." And that's by Henry Nouwen. I don't know who that is. Again, this is an old book. So, and it gives you additional studies too. So question 15 goes into, can my Christian worldview really make a difference? Okay, so again, I'm reading this book along with you. I've got to do a little bit of studying on Luke chapter 10, verses 38 through 32, because it says hospitality is a very important gift to others, and Jesus did not disregard Martha's service. Relationally, how was Martha depriving herself? That's the question. So I'm going to come back to y'all of what I gather from that. But yeah, so enjoy part one and part two. Part one's a little messy. Life's messy. I am a mama, I'm a wife, and I do take what I gather from the Lord seriously. And I soak it in. I try to, gather as much as I can from what I get from reading this book, but also reading the Bible. So, and journaling. So, again, just being very transparent, very real, very raw with y'all. Okay. All right. Y'all have a great evening. Happy Monday. Y'all have a great day. And I will talk to y'all later. Bye, y'all.